a little sort of tray that goes in the top there. That's my ground bait that's going to plug the back of the spod. And then obviously you've got the big cavity in there with the bait in. Use these all the time now. 4 go on the top of my carp porter. Absolutely brilliant product. And then to show you the mix, as I've said, we're boilie fishing, but we've got a few tigers in there as well, and I think it always helps to add a few extra food items in there. We've seen this on the underwater filming. The fish are not really interested in feeding just on boilies. You put something else in the swim and they start feeding on both things. In this case, I've used tiger nuts. The mistake I made at the start of the session, I put loads of sweet corn in this mix. I've done really well on that before. On here it was a kiss of death because there's loads of bream in here. The bream came in, and I think I had 5 or 6 bream to start off with. So I've dropped the corn out of the mix and just boilies and tigers. So if you're fishing somewhere that's got lots of bream in, I know a load of the Dutch lakes that I've fished and the Belgium lakes have had lots of bream in, don't put anything like corn or hemp or pellet or anything. Just stick to boilies and a few nuts in there, and that'll bring the carp in and hopefully not draw the bream in so much. So you see there the mix we've got some half baits, some full baits as well. I love using half baits, chop them up with a cutter. If I'm fishing close in, I'll catapult them in, they make almost no splash. And obviously if I'm spodding, they fit into the spod really well. And on those boilies, I've poured some hemp oil. That's soaked into the boilies. The fish absolutely love the taste of that. And the added bonus is when they start feeding on your bait out there, you get a slick come up and you know it's going to happen. The reel is designed specifically for spodding. It's the Daiwa Emblem spod. I've used this one for years. I absolutely love this. Great big spool so the blade fries off it. A really fast crank on it, 75 turns, brings it back 100 yards, where a normal fishing reel is 100, 110 turns for 100 yards. And that really makes a big difference when you're doing a lot of long range spodding. And then a very kind line clip. That's really important. If that clip was fraying the braid or cutting into the mono when you were spodding, you'd end up with loads of problems. That's really kind to it. That absolutely never happens. And the braid itself is designed specifically for spodding. You can see it's a bright green colour. That's on purpose. It's going to float on the surface. And if I wanted to bait up with a throwing stick, what I'd do is spod out some boilies, leave the spod on the surface so it marks the distance, and then start putting the baits out with a throwing stick. And because you've got that bright coloured braid, the gulls will dive down and try and get the baits, but they won't actually go into the water because they're scared of the braid. And that's attached to 30-pound armour cord, which is really hard wearing braid. You can cast and cast and cast with that. I've joined it together with a 4-turn water knot, which is a tiny little knot. You never hear it go through the rings, and it just makes the whole job so much easier. And then the rod, that's a Longbow DF spod rod. A really stiff rod, very fast recovery, but quite light considering how powerful it is. A long handle and 50mm butt rings going down to 16mm tip, so the line absolutely flies off of there. That's really important when you're spodding. If you're going a long way, you need the right kit to do it. And then the spod I'm using in this situation, that's a Sky Winder, so you can see it's solid all the way up to the veins. And I'm going to put the boilies and tigers in there, fill it up with a bit of water, and that's going to stop the bait coming out the back. And as I put a few spods out, we're going to look at the technique and also the other spods that you can use. So first of all, I've got it all in front of me, all ready to go. Just a scoop up into there, sort of 2/3 fill it, and then just dunk it in the water a couple of times. That's going to hold the baits in. Pick up the line with the bail arm directly underneath the rod. The drop on the rod is about half the length of the rod, and you can see there'll be a transfer of weight. So I'll go from my back foot through onto my front foot. It's only 80 yards, and with this kit it's really easy, but watch the technique anyway because it will help you get further. Start off from my back foot, through onto my front foot. Dink, hit the clip. Actually cast that one too hard, it hit the clip about 20 foot off the water. And then just give it a couple of seconds for the spod to clear. That's what you see a lot of people do wrong. As soon as it's hit the surface, they're winding it back in again. It doesn't give the bait a chance to come out the back of it. So probably the count of 10, all the baits will be dropping out the bottom of it. Flick the floating braid up off the surface and just try and get the back of the spod out of the water as quickly as you can. In this situation, back up to my hand, pour the water out. About 15-20 baits in there. Dunk it into the water, and the thing to concentrate on here is the splash that this fella makes when it hits the surface, or the lack of it. So weight transfer, just a nice gentle splash on the surface. And after a fish, I'll probably put 6 or 8 of these out again and just try and draw the fish back into the water. If I want to put a bit more bait out and not create any splash, then I'll swap over to this fella. That's the original Skyliner, and I'll sort of 3/4 fill it and then plug it with a bit of ground bait at the top. That stops anything coming out the back, hits the water, clears really quickly, and then bring it back in. But in this situation, 6 or 8 spods in the smaller size is enough to get another bite, creates minimum disturbance, and that's how you get a big hit. Wriggling just in your forearms like that over the top of the mat, let him get it out of his system. You can normally see their tail starts tensing up. It might be okay now. No, I can feel him. You can normally feel him, see his tail starting to go. What a lot of people do at this point is let go of them. But you can either put him down on the mat or just hold him in your forearms like that. And then we hold him up. And there he is. 25.5 pounds it went. Well chuffed to get this one off the spot. And it just shows that the baiting situation is working. So we're going to get him back and show you the rig we caught him on. This is my #1 rig for fishing with boilies. It's the IQD rig. You've probably seen me use it before. I've caught some massive fish on this all over Europe on a variety of different waters. It incorporates, in this case, a size 4 curved shank hook, quite a big hook, but because the bait hovers above it when it's lying on the bottom and the bait's got buoyancy to it, it negates the weight of the hook, so you can get away with a bigger hook, which I think is better for snagging in the fish's mouth. These size 4 captor curves are extremely sharp, and basically I've tied some 20-pound IQ2 using my favourite whipping knot onto the top of the shank of the hook. Basically you make a big loop underneath the hook, keeping the tag end really short, and with the front of the loop you just wrap around the hook once and then wrap around again to cross over, and then carry on wrapping down the hook towards your fingertips. When you've done 4 or 5 turns, pull the knot tight with the tag end and then move it up the hook before you pull it fully tight, otherwise you won't be able to move it. You can see there I've got it just above the barb of the hook, so I've got a nice big D. So once it's in position, pull it really tight and cut off the tag end, and then a micro rig swivel gets slid onto that before I tie the knotless knot. So I'm going back through the eye of the hook towards the point, wrapping around the hook 4 or 5 times really tightly. You've got to make sure that everything's lined up nicely on the back of the hook there so it sits perfectly on the bottom. Then the line goes back through the eye of the hook to pull it tight, just a simple knotless knot, and that's basically the D done. And what I like about it is that the bait and the hook are very close together, yet there's still a nice amount of movement in the bait. So if I put this in the palm of my hand and show you how it's going to catch hold, that's just turning straight away. Because of the stiffness of the hook link and the pattern of the hook, as soon as I tighten that up, it's turning over and catching hold. And even though the bait's close to the hook, you can see there the bait's moving around, so it's not getting in the way. And then moving down the hook link, sort of just short of halfway, I've got a small size sinker, and then around that I've put some of the dark matter putty. And what that does is it throws it out as it hits the bottom, so the rig sits flat on the bottom every single time. If you put the putty too close to the eye of the hook, that bit will sink first and the top of the hook link will be looped up, and that can get in the way. Sometimes the fish can spook off of it. And then down to the other end, I've got a link loop tied on there. It's just tied on with a 4-turn half blood knot, very, very simple knot to tie. Through the link loop, round the hook link 4 times, back through the loop you've created, and pull the tag end tight first before you pull the knot properly tight, and that will give it a little bit of extra room, and it will stop kinking the hook link on the end there. You can see that it's nice and straight, so it hasn't lost any breaking strain. And that whole thing is attached to my favourite lead system. This is the cog lead, centre of gravity that means. So you're basically picking the lead up from the heaviest point first. And that definitely gets me more bites. I've used this for a few years now, and I'm absolutely convinced I'm catching more fish because the fish are feeling the full weight of the lead instantly. Now we've mucked around with this system quite a bit, and we've now come up with this swivel system that's got a peg moulded around it. You can see this is a prototype because the swivel's still got a silver colour to it. That's why I've covered it up with shrink tube. But getting that peg to fit in the lead perfectly is what we've been playing around with. and that pushes in under just enough tension. So if we get a take, if I just shake this, boom, it's come off. So first of all, it pulls out of there, and then the lead has actually come off the hybrid lead clip. You see there, I've got a swivel moulded all the way through the lead clip, so there's no way it can pull out the front. And this will actually come all completely tied for you. Just slide the lead on. This is a 3.5 flat pair in this situation. Let's put that back on again. So we're just sliding that onto the arm, like so. The rubber goes over the top, just wet the back of that so there's not too much tension on it, and then push the peg into it. That's not going to pull out on the cast, even with a small PVA bag, but once you get a take, that's going to pull out and turn it into a normal lead clip system. So it's very, very versatile. And that's finished off with some dark matter rig tubing. Absolutely love this stuff. Very, very easy to thread, very heavy as well, and picks up the contours of the bottom, and that will stop the whole thing tangling on the cast because it's thicker and heavier behind the lead. It just stops the hook link from wrapping around it, and when you're playing the fish, that's the thing that's rubbing against the fish as well, rather than the line rubbing against them. So it's kinder to the fish as well. And just before I cast it out, I'll fold a little bit of dissolving foam around the hook to stop that hook from tangling. And if you watch it when you cast, you can see the hook bait is well away from the lead system. It's definitely not tangled, sits on the bottom bolt upright, and then when that foam melts away, it will just fall over because of that bit of putty, and the rig is fishing. So if you're boilie fishing in any country around the world, that is what I recommend. The buoyancy of the hook bait is absolutely key to the success of the IQD rig, and I've achieved that buoyancy in a few different ways here. So the first one is probably my favourite. It takes a little bit more time to do, but I think it's worth it. Basically, you get some boilie paste and just knead cork dust into it. You can buy the cork dust in your local tackle shop. Just knead it in, roll one into a ball, drop it in a glass of water. It'll probably sink to start off with. Take it out, back into the paste, more cork dust on it, roll it into a ball again, drop it in, and you want it so it just floats up to the surface. You can then roll your whole mix, boil them for a couple of minutes, and they're all the perfect buoyancy. And you basically want it sitting just like that really, so the hook is laying flat on the bottom and the bait is just hovering above. And that basically means the bait is obscuring the fish's view of the hook, which I think helps it get taken in the first place. And then if the rig is ejected, then it will come back and sit in that same position again because of the buoyancy of that bait. The hook is obviously heavy, the bait is lighter, and it will always sit over that way. And then the second one's really simple to do. It's just a standard 20mm bottom bait. I've drilled it out with a nut drill. This is the 8mm size, and then filled it up with a cork plug, and that's gone almost all the way through the bait to give it enough buoyancy so it sits in that same way. You don't want too much buoyancy in these baits, so the hook sits over like that. You want the hook laying flat on the bottom. I think that's a little bit too obvious. It's almost getting towards a pop-up. And then moving on to the next one, we've got my take on a classic snowman setup. So normally you'd have one boilie on top, which would be a pop-up, and another boilie underneath. But everybody uses snowmen, and I've found by halving them, you've just got one bait there. You've still got the buoyancy and the attraction of the snowman, but it's not quite so obvious. So on the top there, that's actually a Milky Toffee pop-up, one of the small 10mm ones, and that's been soaked in the almond goo, and it's soaked all the way through to the middle of that. Then half a 15mm hybrid bottom bait underneath it, and that gives it that same buoyancy, so the hook lays flat on the bottom and the bait just hovers above. The only downside I'd say to that one, because you're half and half in the baits, you're allowing water to get into the centre, so it doesn't retain its buoyancy for quite as long. You can see with this one, I've scaled everything down, so it's a size 6 curve shank with a smaller bait. So if I'm fishing for smaller fish and it's not so weedy, that's probably what I'd go for. And then the last one, a bit of plastic corn with a smaller bait underneath it. That sits in the same way. That's the Banoffee pop-up corn, which has got great buoyancy to it. That'll hold that bait up really well. And you can see this one, I've changed the pattern of hook as well. This is a wide gate rather than a curve shank. If you find you're pulling out a fish on curve shanks, maybe it's very weedy and you have to pull really hard, or the fish got particularly soft or damaged mouths, then I go over to a wide gate and you'll find all of that stops. So that's how to create the different buoyancies. Actually putting them on the hair, basically what I do is get a bit of floss, put it through the eye of the micro rig swivel, needle through the bait, and pull all bits of floss through the bait, and then pull the tag end out, tie that in an overhand knot around the hair stop, and the first couple of overhand knots you do, don't pull them too tight, because otherwise you'll drag that boilie more onto that micro rig swivel and you'll close everything up and it won't move up and down the D. Once you've done those 2 knots to start off with, the last one you tie, go through the loop twice and pull it down really tight. You won't pull it any further onto the swivel then, trim it off and then just burn it with a lighter to neaten it up, and that keeps it on. And that means you can use baits of any different size on that same rig. You haven't got to tie loads of different lengths of hairs. It's very, very versatile, and with that added buoyancy, you know the rig's going to reset every time until you actually hook one. Well, we are into another carp in very, very weedy conditions on that IQD rig and cog system. It's kiting round to the right now. I'm really having to give these fish some stick, and this is where a heavier test curve rod really pays. You see this 3 3/4 still really bends well, and I'm very thankful for having 15-pound subline on at this point. Trying to keep the fish up in the surface layers. Oh, he's just charging off now. These are hairy battles. Fish is staying in the upper layers, which suggests the lead has come off. You've just got to keep the pressure on them. Now, it's just charging around on the surface. It's really test the tackle to the limit, this does. Come on, fella. Come on, you are mine. Get in the net. Yes, got him. Wicked, that is brilliant. What a way to finish. And how about that to finish my boilie fishing masterclass? 26 pounds, 2 ounces of stunning Sandhurst common carp. Well chuffed to get this one. And if you employ the tactics I've shown you, I'm sure you'll be catching loads of these as well.
Well, here's another beautiful day ticket carp, 26 pounds, 4 ounces this one. And I caught it on a new and unique hook pattern I've been using for all of my boilie and particle fishing. I'm going to chuck this one back and show you how to use it.
Here it is. This is the
Crank.
The Crank.
Yep.
Absolutely superb. Now talk me through a little bit of the history really, why you come up with it, because it is your brainchild.
I was using the curve a lot and another hook that was like a curve shank hook that was really wide in the gape at the same time. I love the curves, but I feel like we could tweak them a little bit just to make them slightly better for certain situations, the way I would use them. This hook's got a curve shank, a very, very wide gape, so you nick the fish really quickly, a beaked point and a slight offset in it as well, just to make sure that the hook stays in when you're playing them.
So you've got almost all of the properties of our favourite hooks. So you've got the curve of the curve shank, the gape of a wide gape, a little beak in the point, but also an offset of some other very, very good hooks out there. So you've incorporated them all. Tom, do you think then if you had used this hook on underwater part 8, that you would have converted more chances?
I do, I honestly do. I even had him in my bag as well, but I didn't put them on at the time because they were slightly an earlier stage of sampling. But now, as that is now, I have so much confidence in that hook that I think if I would have cast it out on underwater 8, I would have had more bites.
Yeah, brilliant. And you have used it to great effect. I mean, this particular rig itself you used on Thinking Tackle with great success. And the important thing to get across about this hook is its versatility, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you can use it like there at its most standard. It's with a knotless knot and it's doing the job.
Yep.
I tend not to change much with it, but you can use it with all different size baits, different length hook links, particle fishing, boilie fishing, whatever you want to do.
First thing, You've got what, some £20 semi-stiff end trap here?
Yeah, £20 semi-stiff end trap, about 7 inches. I'm just putting it through the back of the eye, knotless knot, whip up about 8 times, and a couple of times back so your knotless knot doesn't slip around the hook. Length of hair, pretty standard really, just so the bottom of the bait will just touch the bottom of the hook if you was to sweep it underneath. I've got a little Brazil there that's got almond goo on it, and a little IB slow sinking corn on top, and I fish that exactly like I would a wafter, you know, like a boilie wafter.
Yeah, so just delicately hovering there, posed.
Yeah, exactly. So the hook will sit on the floor, but the bait will just slightly hover above, not necessarily set up like that, but just be balanced so it's nice and light to go up in the fish's mouth.
Lengthwise, 6 to 8 inches?
Yeah, 6 to 8 inches generally.
Based on the lake bed, yeah?
Yeah, about 6 or 7 inches. A figure of 8 loop knot at the end, and a quick link.
Now onto the leg clip, because I know you love these hybrid leg clips,
Yeah, I
don't you?
really do, yeah. I mean, I use them probably 90% of my fishing. Unless I'm fishing a chod rig, I've got a hybrid leg clip on, even with zigs, things like that, because I know that they're going to drop the lead. I use them everywhere.
And on to another brainchild of yours, Tom, the dark matter rig tubing.
Yep.
Supple, heavy as you like, and easy to thread. All the things you want from a bit of rig tubing.
Yeah, it's the perfect bit of tubing, like you said. Sinks really well, thread it easily, no trouble. It's the right colour.
Well, there you go. Really simple to tie and brilliant at catching pressured fish, easy fish. It works absolutely anywhere.
Now I've got my 3 rigs back out on the spot. I'm just going to take you through my hardware quickly. First of all is my rod in Infinity DF 3 3/4 pound test curve. They're ideally suited for long range fishing really, but because of the nice through action of the rod, I'm able to fish them at 40 yards at Walthamstow or 80 yards like I'm here today at Sandhurst. I'm coupling that with a Bezier QDX reel. They've got a quick drag spool on to make it nice and easy when you're playing the fish. A perfectly designed line clip so it doesn't damage your line, and a long spool for when you want to cast them long distances. And I'm resting that setup on the Delkim TXIs. You've got the sensitivity, the volume and the tone on there. The tone's always at that deep sound for me. I don't like that high pitched sound, and the sensitivity is always between 2 and 4. I don't like it too sensitive, so when the wind's blowing you're getting bleeps all the time, but still I want enough sensitivity there to make sure that I'm getting bleeps when there's movement at the other end. I'm coupling that with a stow bobbin. The stow bobbin's got a small clip on the side of it to pinch your line, so your indication's far better, and you'll notice that my lines are much tighter today than they normally would. I'm fishing out 80 yards and there's weed in between me and where my hook baits are, so I need to make sure that I'm getting indication very, very quickly. So this is a very reliable setup and one that I use pretty much anywhere I go.
So let's talk about the boilies, because it's no secret you're fanatical about mainline. You've used it pretty much your whole fishing life, haven't you? So this is the latest, I suppose, in the long line of brilliant baits that they've brought out, the hybrid.
Yeah, I mean it's a fantastic bait. For me to have moved off of the cell must mean it's good, because I've caught so many fish on the cell and loved it. But now I'm catching just as many, if not more, on this new one.
Everyone likes a little change, and I suppose when we first put this in front of the cameras when we were filming Underwater 7 and 8 at St John's, the fish went just as mad for this as they were the cell.
Yeah, exactly.
Great for the confidence, huh?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, anything in a mainline bay is good, but this one really is good, yeah.
In this beautiful gunky bucket is
Tigers.
There you go. Now, I know you love always, where rules allow, of course, to have a little nutty number in your armoury.
Yep.
You love peanuts.
Yeah, peanuts I really like using. You're not allowed to use them here. Tigers I love as well. It's just wherever the situation takes you, whether you can actually get them into your swim or not, because usually I'm just using boilies and a stick. I can't use them as much as I'd like to.
So get them up, come on,
here,
let's have a look at them.
Because I'm spodding, I'm fishing a small sort of spot, about 80 yards.
Yep.
I can put these in the spod, block it off with a little bit of ground bait there,
yep,
and they don't come out the back.
Talk about ratios. So when you're baiting up with both, what ratio is boilies to tigers?
Probably 2/3 boilies to tigers.
Yep.
So I'll do, every 3 spods, I'll have 1 with tigers in with a little bit of ground bait, and mostly boilies.
Okay, well, talking about the ground bait, here we go. Just one from the activated range from mainline. This is the nut mix one, so to complement your growlers.
Yep.
There you go. And this is what you use just to plug up the back of the spod, is that right?
Yeah, just put it in the back of the spod. None of the nuts or boilies can fall out. It's a nice little added bit of extra attraction.
This one looks like a very dark bait. You know, it's like your cell pop-ups that you buy in a normal ready-made tub.
Yep.
But you've done something to these, haven't you?
Yeah, I've put caramel cloud goo on them ones. I've generally only got 2 baits. One's bright, one's dark. and they're both flavours that I'm really confident in. So if I think I want to use a dark bait, I'll use the caramel ones, and if I think I need a higher tract, I'll use the pink ones.
So even though these are dark, they're still going to let off a very light haze, which symbolises the amount of taste and goodness that's coming away from the hook bait. But you will still see within that haze that brown coloured hook bait. So you're almost matching the hatch, but adding a taste element, aren't you? These are cell hook baits that have just been dumbbells and normal ones that have been soaked in the pineapple, in the almond supreme and the almond power smoke. You, to be fair, were the man who discovered these on Underwater 8, weren't you?
Yeah, they worked so well then, and they've worked so well for me since, so they go everywhere with me, them ones.
Okay, and finally, we have, let me get these out, just so you can see them back at home. Very good to eat, very good to catch carp with.
You've eaten most of them, haven't
you?
Yeah. Yeah, they're brilliant bait. I sort of trim off both ends and then trim off the skin around the outside. You're left with quite a white looking nut. So they're quite a high attract thing to fish over the top of nuts, but it's almost matching the hatch as well.
So the sacred Brazil nut, like anything with the word Brazil in, it's generally quite good. Brilliant. So, and you do tip it with a bit of plastic as well, a bit of fake food from our range?
Yeah, just either a little bit of yellow corn. I'm using IB on this trip. I had a bite on that this morning. And yeah, if I want to change the colours, I would just tip it with different colour corn.
Okay, brilliant. Well, there you go. A nice compact range that you can take anywhere and be rest assured you're going to catch loads of carp.
This one's on a slightly different setup than we talked about earlier. It's on a hinge stiff rig. So hopefully if we get him in, I can talk you through it. Lovely.
Yes.
Excellent stuff. Here he is, a lovely little 19-pound Sandhurst mirror carp. This one I caught on a 2-inch pop-up on a neat little pop-up rig. I like to use as an alternative to my bottom bait setup. I'll get him back and I'll show you how to tie it.
Now, one thing I love about Dovey is every time he goes out fishing to somewhere new, you always tend to try a pop-up and a bottom bait, don't you? Why is that?
Just work out what's working best. I mean, sometimes you just find out, for whatever reason it is, I'm not sure, but that a pop-up will work best or a bottom bait will work best, so it's for you to find out, isn't it?
Okay, so let's talk, firstly, what do you like about this?
The three main things I like, really, are the swivelling part here, so that it can spin and catch hold in the fish's mouth. 2, that it's extremely stiff, both this part and this part here, so you don't get any tangles. And 3, just the height of the pop-up there.
Okay, so that's about, I'd say, 1.5 inches, including the hook?
Yeah, it's just a short little pop-up rig. It's not 2 or 3 inches like some people fish. It's just off the deck.
Right. Now, before we talk about how to tie it, one of the sort of signatures of all of your fishing is the end trap semi-stiff.
Yeah.
You had it on your crank hook rig. This particular thing, is that all about the reset? You've mentioned it so many times on the underwater.
Yeah.
Fish get away with it more times on your rigs than anyone else's. But that's why you like a stiffer material.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's for non-tangles in the beginning, and then it's for the same reason while it's out there. If the fish are picking it up, spit it back out, it's kicking back out, and you're out there for another go.
So come on then, a little bit fiddly,
Yeah.
but how'd you get this fella tied up?
Put it through the back of the eye like you normally would for a knotless knot, whip up the shank 5 times, so not quite as many as you normally would, and then go back through the back of the eye. So you've got a standard knotless knot, and then what would normally be your hair, I'd slide on a small rig ring, and then I'll pass the hair back through the back of the eye, cut it, and then blob it, so then you formed your D. And then I'll tie the mouth trap with just a 2-turn blood knot to the size 11 ring swivel, and then I'll just tie on my boom section, which is the 20-pound mouth trap.
Okay.
End trap even.
Yep, and you've got a nice little curve in that, just to sort of help it catch the bottom lip.
Yep.
On pickup. Now, there's another ready-tied version of this, Tom. The chod part of this, if you like, that little bit is available ready-tied, isn't it?
Yeah, it's available exactly the same spec as that, 1.5 inches off the deck, tied almost the same. I mean, I should be using them really.
Yeah, exactly. Straight out the packet, and all you have to do then is get yourself a spool of end trap, and you can just knock this up. If you don't have the time or you don't want to do it, you can do a ready tie version, exactly the same. And let's talk about the pop-ups, Tom. I presume they have to be quite buoyant, mate, don't they, to keep this up?
Yeah, I mean the mainline pop-ups are really buoyant anyway. That's just a size 12. I like to fish small pop-ups, especially when I'm fishing over nuts and boilies. So yeah, it's extremely buoyant. I'm not leaving it out there for more than 5 or 6 hours anyway, so it's not going to sit over. I'll reel it in and change it.
Well, there you go, an awesome pop-up rig that Dovey rates very highly. And remember, next time you visit a new venue for the very first time, then try a pop-up and a bottom bait and just see which one works out best on the day. Now then, Dovanelli, the question on a lot of people's lips is always about bait quantity. So let's take a typical venue, like Sandhurst or a well-stocked day ticket with a few hundred carp in it. You're on a 24-hour session.
Yep.
You arrive. How much bait do you normally put out at the start?
About 20 to 25 spods.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah, if you put 6 or 7, up to 10 spods out first of all, it can be gone pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I make sure that put 20 out. And you've got a nice bit of bait out there to start the session.
Okay, so this is the typical spod that you use to bait up with. This is the Skyliner.
Skyliner, yeah.
Which is the original spod, if you like. Very aerodynamic, but puts out a good payload.
Yep.
So 25 or 20 to 25 spods at the start. But what about when you've had a fish? What do you top up with then?
If I'm catching every now and then, probably 5 or 6 spods every go. Every time I catch a fish. If I'm catching more fish, I'm getting double takes and it's quite a hectic session, then I'll put 10 spods out because there's obviously a lot of fish in the swim and all your bait's going. So you've got to read how much bait you think's being eaten to say how much you put out.
Okay, great stuff. Now, talking about topping up, do you ever change the type of spod that you put out?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I'll chop between this and a Sky Raider, slightly smaller, more aerodynamic. If the wind picks up, I'll use a Raider. And if I just want to put a little bit of bait out after each fish, then I'll use a Raider as well.
Is there a case for the dinner bell in between lulls in the action?
Yeah, definitely, exactly in between what you've just said. Not doing nothing and not putting loads out all the time. You've put your bed of bait out, so there's enough bait there to get them going. It's more the case of just putting 2 out every couple of hours if nothing's happening, just to keep a bit of interest in the swim.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it on Underwater 7 and 8, didn't we? That the fish would almost get bored of a spot. You know, they'd have a feel, they'd never clean you out totally, would they?
No.
Most of it would be gone, but then either a handful of bait or even Dan trying to scare the ducks with the sound of the spod would just instantly draw fish in.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a mirror image of what happens on a lot of lakes?
Yeah, definitely. The spod's used so common now that the fish know that it's food.
Yeah.
So as soon as it lands, they're coming in to see and investigate what's happening. So yeah, keeping it going in is important.
All right, final question. You're on a big fish venue now,
Yeah.
or a lower stocks venue, let's say. What sort of quantities do you go for there?
Between 5 and 10, and I'll probably have 2 different spots. So less amount of bait, 2 different areas, just fishing for a bite at a time.
Yeah.
So I'm not putting loads of bait out to try and get a hit, just trying to nick a bite.
So you're trap setting.
Exactly.
Okay, well, great stuff. So think about the amounts you put out, and if you follow Tom's advice, then you're going to get off to a running start. I absolutely love using solid bags, whether I'm fishing at short range or long range, in or out of weed, or after small fish or big carp. It really doesn't matter. This method is brilliantly versatile, and what I love about it the most is that it's confidence in a bag. When it's out there, I know my rig is always presented, and we've tried to tell you on the underwater filming how important it is that that rig and that bait is acceptable to the carp and they can get it in their mouth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this baby out there and I'm going to take you through my solid bag masterclass. The first thing I do when I'm solid bag fishing is actually prepare the bait that I'm going to put inside the bag. So you can go as mad or as simple as you like. So this is a simple option, so you could just use plain pellets. Now the brilliant thing about this spod and PVA mix by Mainline is you've got all different sizes of pellets, different breakdowns, different attractors, And the good thing about this is the fact that it actually helps to compact the bait better. Because you've got all different sizes, they almost sort of purchase around each other like a nice cement, giving you a perfect solid bait.